Hey guys, it's your boy Mixwood here. So this is just like the payoff of one of my scenarios I've been doing on Sea Power. It's not like 40 minutes of setup to like get it to this point with all the ships in place and all the aircraft in place. So this is set about 1971. Basically I've been doing scenarios where there's a bit of backstory. I've been doing like an alternate history thing where the South China Sea has basically fallen to the Chinese after freedom of navigation attempts. The Royal Navy has been sunk. Now no one wants to mess with China in the South China Sea. The Chinese and the Russians are now taking advantage of this with a push on South Korea, helping the North Koreans. So I've basically set up a scenario where there's like a bunch of cargo ships and landing ships, Russian cargo and landing ships, landing on the South Korean beaches. But before we have to get there, we have to get through a US Navy fleet and a Japanese fleet. There is no South Korean ships in this really. There's like a mod with like a 2008 South Korean ship as far as I can tell. So there's no actual South Korean ships, but the US Navy is there helping and a bit of 2 Japanese ships. The Russians have launched bombers from the north in North Korea. The Chinese are sort of there helping, although the Chinese don't really do anything in this scenario, and they're like way less advanced than the Russians at this point. As you'll see, we've got a massive Tu-16K, I think that's what they are, that's launched a mass of AS2s and AS6s on the US fleet. And I wanted to just do this scenario to show where the US doesn't really have any way to counter the Russian ships, because at this point the Americans basically don't have anti-ship missiles. The Americans basically don't get them until 1977, and I think that even then, I think the first ship that gets it is a patrol boat, so there's no harpoons or anything like that. And I'm just sort of like just demonstrating, like with a concerted, although maybe not realistic number of Russian units, you can pretty easily overwhelm US forces. In fact, I'm pretty sure with like we could have like halved the number of launches and we still would have wiped out the American ships, because there is the Russian Navy, there's the Chinese AWACS, and there's also the Chinese Navy, and there's also like 3 Russian submarines that could have sunk these ships as well. But I just wanted to demonstrate how much the Americans can't really do anything at this point, at this time period. So yeah, I hope you enjoy, and bye bye. So, quick note, I've actually done some looking after I've recorded that first bit, and it turns out that the Russians had potentially in 1971 between 500 and 700 Tu-16Ks, so it's perfectly conceivable that 12 would take off and launch this many missiles at a fleet in North Korea. So I feel a little vindicated, although it wasn't the intention to be realistic, but it just turns out it is sort of realistic that potentially a pretty small number of Tu-16Ks could have launched this many missiles at a US fleet. So I'm pretty certain if I like doubled the size of the US fleet, you'd still see most of the ships get destroyed, even by this number of Tu-16s. Potentially. I mean, I don't think maybe all of them would be destroyed, but especially if I concerted the effort with the Russian forces to the west, sorry, even double the number of ships would have easily been destroyed, easy squeezies. So yeah, there you go. The more you know.
离架。武器离架，命中目标，武器离架。
Вас понял. Курс.
武器离架。
So congratulations if you made it to the end of this video. So basically, yeah, as you see, complete wipeout. Pretty sure we could have like halved the number of ships and aircraft, and we still easily would have won. You saw that the Chinese were bombing the Japanese at the end because the Japanese were like far less of a threat than the Americans. But yeah, so I really want to do more scenarios. I like the world building I've done at least, and I don't know if I'll do more videos of this. Because it takes a lot of setup, and I think it's pretty boring, like watching the setup. And I don't know if I can ramble that long because it takes so long to like get all the ships set up and everything, and they're like in position. Like we're not even talking about the mission editor here, like actually like getting everyone in position before we like do the launches. But yeah, I think next up will be a invasion of Japan, I think, and then I really want to like do this where the Americans get pushed back, and then they make a big concerted effort to push back once they've been pushed back to the US, I think. Which we'll probably do something like around Guam. Maybe we go to like Guam. We maybe win or lose at Guam, and then we get the big push from the Americans. We'll see, or Hawaii. Who knows? But yeah, I do want to make the Chinese more of a focus, but to get to that point, I want this to be like the Russians, as they were in real life, are a major threat, and then the Chinese sort of take over from the Russians, and maybe like something economically happens to the Russians or something. The USSR probably doesn't fall in this. We'll see. Maybe the USSR does fall in a way, but yes, it's fun just making up a scenario and seeing what happens. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and bye bye.